The 2022 Mr. Olympia is officially over, and it was definitely one to remember for a lot of really good reasons and some very surprising ones. 2022 saw the crowning of 5 new Olympia champions, while 6 reigning champions held off the competition to add one more O to the collection. One reigning champion that this can't be said for though is Big Ramy. Heading into this year's Olympia, there were high hopes for Ramy to get the three-peat, as many analysts had him winning. Not to mention the sneak peeks of his physique a few weeks out, predicting the likely crowning of Ramy as the 2022 Olympia champion. But unfortunately, that wouldn't happen. Not even close. As Ramy came out in prejudging, he may have looked good, but he certainly wasn't as outstanding as everyone thought he would be. His conditioning overall had regressed, and he was holding on to a lot more water than we had seen from him in the last 2 years. Objectively, this wasn't his best package, and combined with the fact that his main contenders took the massive leaps that they did, Ramy had more than left the door open for them to burst in. And they did just that. Brandon Curry, Nick Walker, Derek Lunsford, and the new Mr. Olympia, Hadi Choopan, all placed ahead of Big Ramy. 4 different competitors, something which was not only unexpected, but actually very rare. When looking back at the few instances when Olympia champions were dethroned, I couldn't remember the last time a reigning champ fell that many placings, because in Olympia history, when the reigning champ is dethroned, they're usually still good enough to take second place. Let me elaborate. In the Mr. Olympia's 57-year history, there's only been 9 instances where the reigning champion was dethroned. 70, 80, 84, 06, 08, 11, 18, 20, and most recently, 2022. Now in 6 of those 9 instances, the dethroned champion fell 1 placing to second, only losing to the new champion who dethroned them, which is the most common occurrence considering how rare it is for the reigning champion to come in so far behind the competition. In one of those instances, the dethroned champ fell 2 placings to third, which happened at the controversial 1980 Mr. Olympia when Frank Zane lost to Chris Dickerson and a relatively washed up Arnold. Now this is where Ramy makes history, because at the 2022 Mr. Olympia, he had the most fallen placings for a reigning champ in 38 years. This put him second on the list for the biggest fall off, only behind one man, Samir Bannout, who fell 5 placings to 6th at the 1984 Mr. Olympia.
Number 2, Samir Bannout.
Now, although Ramy didn't have the biggest fall in history, this was still pretty significant given the expectations that Ramy would bring his best package ever. After all, he had finally figured out how to come in condition, right? Well, it's not always that simple, because a competitor may find the formula to get conditioned one year, but that same formula may not work the following year. Every prep is different, and as a competitor's body changes year over year, coaches are going to need to make adjustments and fine-tune protocols to get their athlete to peak perfectly, which is a science in and of itself. But according to Big Ramy's trainer Dennis James, he doesn't know what happened.
I took pictures here twice a day, and not once was I worried about him not being at his best. Now this is very, very concerning to me, because when we look at these photos of Big Ramy, he does not look at his best. We can see the dents, we can see the damage to the back, we can see the damage to the triceps. He does not look good here.
As we know in bodybuilding, the slightest variable can throw off a competitor's entire prejudging, and it's a given that that's going to happen to somebody every year. We just don't know who that is. But the reigning champ is never the guess. He wasn't as sharp as he has been the past 2 years, giving the rest of that open lineup a serious chance at sneaking in. Combine that with the fact that Hadi, Derek, and Nick all objectively brought their best looks ever and were as tight as they could have been in every aspect of the package, we have the formula for an upset completed, and boy was it a big one. Despite the shock of Ramy placing as low as he did, crowning Hadi Choopan the new Mr. Olympia is a decision that I don't think anyone can disagree with, considering how complete he was at this year's Olympia. He not only came in fuller, but maintained that razor-sharp conditioning that he's known for and brought a physique that you could not take your eyes away from. He maximized the potential that everyone knew he had. Now, I can honestly say that Ramy's fall in placing is not worse than Samir Bannout's, because they both lost to competitors who brought objectively better packages, and you could make the argument that he should have beaten Brandon Curry, but that's subjective. But what I would say the biggest thing they both have in common is how close the competition was to them. They were never head and shoulders above the rest of the division like Lee Haney or Phil Heath. The rest of the field was always just one slip up away from taking them down, which meant that their room for error was much smaller than that of other champions. They had to be near perfect to retain, but they weren't. Ultimately, I don't think it's over for Ramy, but I do think regaining that title is going to be much more difficult for him than that of other champions in the past, because of the amount of new quality competitors he's going to have to deal with that are rapidly improving. But all Ramy and his camp can do is learn from this and come back better next year, and show the world the exact amount of grit that Ramy really has.